Hey friends, Gary here. Welcome to today's video. Today's episode is a special episode because we're going to compare different lenses for portrait photography. We're here in Mustika, Yogyakarta hotel. We're on a staycation right now, and I'm going to compare all of these different lenses for taking portraits of my wife in this beautiful resort location. And the goal of today's video is not really to compare which one is the best for portrait. It's a very personal thing, but rather I want to show you the effects of different focal lengths on the subject when you are doing portrait. So for example, if you don't have a proper portrait lens, you can see beforehand how will that particular lens create or render the portrait. So yeah, that's the goal of today's video. So this is Nora. Please say hi to Nora, my wife. And Nora will be the model for today's comparison video. So we will try to make sure that Nora will appear the same on each frame, so that again you can see the effect of different focal lengths on portrait photography. So in terms of gear, here are all of the cameras and lenses that I will use for today's comparison video. Let's start with the camera first. I will use two cameras simply because they share the same sensor and they don't really have that much difference in terms of image quality. The first guy is the Panasonic Lumix GX85, this guy right here, and then the other guy is this guy right here. This is the Panasonic Lumix GX850. Again, for today's purpose, they are similar camera with similar result. Now, speaking about lenses, as I mentioned before, some of these lenses are not dedicated portrait lens, but again, we want to see how they compare with dedicated portrait lenses. First, right here, this is the Panasonic Leica 9mm f1.7 ultra wide angle lens. This is usually used for landscape scenery, vlogging, that kind of stuff. We're going to see how it performs for portrait photography. And then over here we have the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7 general purpose everyday kind of photography lens. This is good for all sorts of different kind of stuff, but not for portraits specifically. And then over here we have the Panasonic Lumix 20mm f1.7, slightly more telephoto compared to the 15mm, so this has a little bit more of that 3D pop. This is usually used for street photography, product photography, and also for everyday photography as well. It is still quite flexible in my opinion. For the dedicated portrait lens, here's the Olympus 45mm f1.8 mild telephoto focal length, perfect for portrait. And we're going to also compare the Olympus 75mm f1.8, my favorite portrait lens ever. Alright, let's begin our photo shoot of the day. That's my wife Nora. Please say hello to Nora. So we're going to compare all of the portrait lenses today. However, the first lens is actually not something that you usually associate with portrait, and that is an ultra wide angle lens. This over here is my Panasonic Leica 9mm f1.7, usually for landscape, vlogging, scenery, not really for portrait. A little bit for environmental portrait, but we're going to use this to compare with the other lenses as well, simply because it can give you an interesting result, and because this guy also have a large f1.7 aperture. For all of the portraits today, we're going to keep the frame relatively similar, so my wife will appear the same size on every single photo, so you can get a better understanding of what each lens can do on this subject. Alright, let's start with the photo shoot, half body portrait. I'm going to set the camera to f1.7. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice, let's do it one more time. f1.7 auto ISO. Nice. Alright, so next lens we're going to use the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7. Again, not really a portrait lens. This is more of a general purpose everyday photography kind of lens, useful for street photography, scenery, a little bit of landscape, product photography, that kind of stuff. But we're going to do environmental portrait with this guy anyway. So again, the setup is a little bit different. I'm using a different camera now. This is the GX850. Previously, I was using my GX85, but same sensor anyway. So the result difference will be negligible. f1.7 aperture priority. Let's try to compose with my wife as the subject. Alright, excellent. 1, 2, 3. Similar composition as before. 1, 2, 3. Last one. I will only show you the sharpest one and the best result. 1, 2, 3. Nice. Alright. Next lens is the Panasonic Lumix 20mm f1.7. Again, not the usual portrait lens, but this can do portrait really well in my opinion. This has slightly more telephoto focal length. I usually use this guy for street photography, for product photography, that kind of stuff. So let's use this guy and see the result. Again, similar setting. I'm using the GX85 again. We're switching cameras back and forth, but again, the sensor is the same between these two cameras. f1.7 aperture priority. Alright, let's try to take picture of my wife. Similar composition, similar angle. 1, 2, 3. Nice. One more. 1, 2, 3. Last one. 1, 2, 3. Alright. So now I've switched lens to the Olympus 45mm f1.8. Now this is the usual suspect for portrait lens. It has a medium telephoto focal length and also large aperture of f1.8. We'll see the result and then we will compare it with the other lenses. So setting is similar. I'm using the GX850, aperture priority f1.8 and auto everything else. Similar composition. I will try to frame my wife as best as I can. I will approximate the composition and the proportion. So here we go, something like this, f1.8, really nice. 1, 2, 3, again. 1, 2, 3, one more time. 1, 2, 3, really nice. Alright, last but not least, here's my favorite portrait lens for micro four thirds, and this is the Olympus 75mm f1.8. The beast. It's my secret weapon for creating nice portrait using micro four thirds camera. So this has the longest focal length for today's video. It's gonna be a little bit unwieldy. I need some space between my subject and the camera because the focal length is pretty much telephoto right now. But yeah, setting is similar. I'm using the GX85 for this one, f1.8, aperture priority, everything else automatic. Let's try to take picture of my wife. And as we can see, we need to step back a little bit, so I need to adjust the camera. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing on the camera. And here we go, f1.8 aperture priority. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Really nice. One more. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Alright, now we're finished taking the pictures. Now it's time for us to compare all of the results taken using those different lenses. So now on the screen I will show all of the pictures together in one frame so you can compare all of the focal lengths. And right away, I'm not going to say which one is the best, but obviously my favorite is going to be the Olympus 75mm f1.8, simply because it is a proper portrait lens. When it comes to portrait, background blur is important, and the Olympus 75mm f1.8 with the combination of its large aperture and telephoto focal length can help to produce even more background blur. So that's no surprise right here, we already know. However, the 9mm, the widest one with the less background blur, also in my opinion still looks okay for environmental portrait. So it's not really a problem in my opinion for you to use a wider focal length for portrait photography. Although it's not going to produce extreme amount of background blur, I think it is still acceptable, and in a pinch it can look good too. Well, yes, you're going to say things like there's the distortion caused by the wider angle focal length. Of course, it's going to present, especially if you are very close to your subject. But in my opinion, you can use this for your advantage. For example, you want to emphasize more of the scenery, so you want to show off that you're going somewhere nice, then wide angle focal length can work better in that regard. If you are using something that produces extreme amount of background blur, people will not be able to tell where you are, like if it's a beautiful location or not. Maybe sometimes, you know, background blur isn't everything. maybe you need a little bit of context, and wider focal lengths can really help in that regard. My personal favorite for wider angle focal length will be either the Panasonic Leica 15mm or the Panasonic Lumix 20mm. It shows context, but it's not too exaggerated in terms of distortion. And for my own personal favorite when it comes to portrait, I still prefer the result from the Olympus 75mm. However, in terms of practicality, the 45mm makes more sense. You don't have to stand too far from your subject. You can still have that nice working distance between you and the model. I think that's important when you are on the field. However, if you have all the time in the world, you don't mind having to make more effort to create a nice portrait, then the Olympus 75mm is the answer right here. And that wraps up today's video. So that is all for the portrait comparison. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Hopefully this has been interesting, entertaining, and also inspiring and useful as well. So please let me know on the comment down below, what do you think of today's comparison? Which one is your favorite in terms of focal length? Also share your experience about portrait photography down below. I want to hear more from you guys. Also, don't forget to support my channel by liking this video, sharing this video, subscribing to my channel down below. And if you want to support my work even further, consider using the affiliate links on the description below. Use the super thanks button to make a small donation to my channel, or purchase my travel photography ebook called Simplifying Travel Photography, link also in the description. Also, say goodbye to Nora. Thank you, and we will see you on the next video. Goodbye.